Hey everyone, and welcome back to A Couple of Apes. I'm your host, Drew Bonaiuto, and in this podcast, I talk to people that are following their dreams and doing what they love to do instead of the majority of the population. So today I'm talking with Stephanie Marinate. Was that right?
That's
I,
right. You
I
got it.
already I already forgot and just kind of winged it, but it all worked out in the end. So
You got
how
it.
you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. All right, here we go. Let's just start by, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What are some basics about you to point a picture to, I can read, to paint a picture for everyone listening?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Stephanie Monick. I'm 50 years old. I was born and raised in Massachusetts. Right now I live in Lowell, Mass. Looking out here at the lovely, I use that in quotes, Merrimack River, which is lovely or not lovely, depending upon your take on it.
Right, right.
Personally, Lowell gets a lot of shade, but personally, I've been very grateful to be able to live here because it's close to my office. I walk there, and it
Right.
also affords me, like I mentioned before, about the photography opportunities.
Yeah,
I've been very blessed, but I mean, there's been all kinds of wonderful things I've been able to go out and walk and photograph, especially during COVID.
absolutely.
Um, I spent a ton of time out by the river taking pictures of, herons, and I even got gosh, I forget the name, eBird. It's from the Cornell School of Ornithology, something like that. I had a sighting of a snowy egret
Oh,
last
really?
fall, and it was like considered a rare sighting. So I got
Oh,
this like
wow.
special email, like, we want to thank you for your, so it was just fun. I mean, I wasn't why I was doing it, but like
Sure.
it was just sort of like, I've been here for a little while, and I just had no idea like the level of wildlife that was, in this area. So it's been, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's something I wish more people would realize that you don't have to like go to the, I don't know, Alaskan wilderness to
Hmm.
find exciting things. You can go in your yard, you can visit a local park. There's a lot more happening than you realize once you start to pay attention.
Definitely. When we first moved here to where we're living now, right on the river, we had a hawk land on the windowsill and just was chilling for like
Really?
15 minutes. And I was like,
Wow.
I'm trying
That's
to get
fantastic.
my phone and make sure I get a video, but I don't want to startle it.
Right, right.
Um, but I had a hawk poop on me, or not poop on me, poop at me while I was running.
At you.
I up, yes,
So what's the difference
absolutely
between
at me.
on and at? At sounds aggressive to me.
It was at, it
It
was
was
at, it was for sure at. I mean, I hate to say it, but man, he looked
you,
right at me and
you
then
can just
turned
see
his
it in
butt, and
his
I was like,
face.
and I was like, I'm running, and I'm like, and I would always bring my phone, and my boyfriend, who's slash my boxing coach, will be like, maybe you'd get more running in if you didn't have your freaking phone. And I'm like, I don't care, because the only way I'm going to go out there is if I have the possibility or
Right.
potential of taking some like picture of something. So I was like, I didn't want it to see me, and I'm like, that bird just shit at me. I can't even believe
That's
it, but yeah,
fantastic.
it was
All right.
it really was. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but I love nature. I love being, in nature. I find it very grounding.
I do
So,
too.
and it's just I think in this day and age, as much as I love technology, I love it,
Mhm.
love it, love it.
Right.
Um, I am not one of those people that's like, technology is the
Right.
devil, and no,
Right.
no,
Right.
I think it's fantastic. But I do believe there's a time and a place to disconnect and be out in nature, and just try to be, even if you're using technology in order to sort of capture those moments. But and that's the great part, is that you can do that.
Yeah, you can blend. Yeah.
I can share that hawk pooping at me moment with the world because of
Yes.
technology.
And then you can get
So
sympathy on social media for the
that's right. It was a
hawk
big hit on
assault.
Reddit.
Was it? Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know I was
Yes.
talking
Got
to
a
someone
lot of
who's famous on Reddit.
I'm not, but just that one, and I'm not a big Redditor either, but I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I ended up uploading. Wow, this is going off the rails, and it's what, like, we're 10 minutes in. Here,
I love it. No, I
we're,
love it. I love it. All right. So tell me about your work. What is
oh
it
boy.
that you
Okay.
do? Let's just start with
What is it
that.
that I do? Well, that's an okay. So I don't have a good name for, because again, when you kind of go off the beaten path a little bit, it gets funky about trying to describe it. Um, but I call myself kind of a mind body expert, emotional fitness, chronic pain coach, whatever kind of blend you want to use to make
Right.
those things all make sense. So I basically help people that are trapped, either by chronic pain or trapped with negative emotions, trauma symptoms, PTSD symptoms. I help people kind of get out of those mental, physical jams.
That's great. So it sounds like you got a blend of physical and mental.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I do the bridge, right? So I feel like, I kind of bridge the mental and the physical, and that connection between the mind and the body, trying to figure out.
It only makes sense because when you really start to think about it, it's very strange how you go to see one doctor to work on, your mind. You see a different doctor to work on your body. Like when everything's so connected. Yeah.
Definitely. And that was our own, that's all part of our, the history of medicine, what have you, was that, there was a point in time where the mind, the body, and the spirit were viewed as, one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
And then Rene Descartes, the philosopher, like he made a handshake deal with the church, like, hey, give me some bodies, give me some cadavers so I can dissect, because that's my jam.
Right.
And they were like, great, you can do that as long as we, the spirit and the mind is considered our domain. Science can take the physical.
Oh,
Yeah,
I haven't heard this story, huh?
That was the start. That's what started it. That's what got us in this shit show, to be honest.
Wow.
I mean, that's the shit. We're in a shit show,
Yeah,
right?
no,
we're all
for real.
disconnected. We're all disembodied. We're
Absolutely.
all, suppressing and repressing uncomfortable emotions.
It's fat. When did all that happen?
That was like 17th century.
Yeah, that's all fascinating to me, because you look at, like, for example, old like Buddhist texts, and they're talking about, connecting the mind with the body and getting centered and all of this. And then it's almost like science came along, got real confused at a certain point, and then we're like starting to figure it out for the second time again.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing I find really interesting, because it's, when you look at all the different areas where this type of work takes place, everyone uses different language.
Right.
But it's all the same thing.
Yeah, it really is.
You talk to like one domain and they call it one thing.
Right.
One person calls it mind body, and this one calls it interoception, and this one calls it it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing. But I think as humans, we like to overcomplicate things. The people that can benefit are the ones that are going to be like, oh, it's this special modality.
Yes. Right.
Right. Open your wallet, give me the money for the special modality. And no, it's not. We already have it in us. We don't know it.
Right. No, it's so true. I love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm just a podcast host over here, but I still agree. So how long have you been doing this work for?
I started in like 2013, and it's changed over time to where I'm at now. I started off just as I want to help people in pain, because I had chronic pain for over like 20 years. Wow. I was like, this is what I want to do. And in my own experience and my own research, this is sort of where I got to the point that I'm at now.
Right. So that's pretty cool. So it's just kind of inevitable based on what you were going through, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very cool. No, I like it when it's actually funny. I just did not at all the same thing, but I just did a podcast episode the other day with a barber who, when she was in like 9th grade, she got one bad haircut and she never let anyone cut her hair again. And then she started doing people's hair. So I think it's fascinating how we have something that happens to us. We're like, we don't like the way things are being handled. And then, some of us step up and put ourselves out there with that. How did you, actually, I think you already mentioned this, but how did you land on this? What pushed you towards this career? Was it really purely just your own struggles?
Yeah, it was, I was in chronic pain for 20 years. I was like probably my, high school age when I started getting back pain.
Oh, wow.
And then it would come and go. When I was active, played sports, I was like, and then I was in my mid 20s and it really got bad.
Really?
And I was sent for an MRI, and they're like, well, you have degenerative disc
Uh-huh.
disease, and you've got 4 herniated discs, and you've got spinal
Oh,
stenosis, and the whole,
jeez.
the
Whole
diagnosis,
list.
right? The
Yeah.
whole list. And you've got the lower back of like a 40-year-old. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean when I'm 40? And they're like,
Right.
well, you're probably gonna have the lower back of a 60-year-old. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And
Yeah.
they're like, well, you'll probably end up, in a wheelchair or on disability. And it was all very dire,
Yeah.
right? So it was, and this was like 94, 95, like
Uh,
right before the OxyContin,
mm,
so just before that. And they were like, here's some Vicodin, take that. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, why does my knee hurt? Why does my shoulder hurt? And then it was
yeah.
just, this sort of like this, lots of like, take this physical
Mm-hmm.
therapy, we're going to cut it. We're going to drug it. We're going to, all of
Right.
that. And I was in it. I didn't know any better.
Sure.
Um, and I ended up having 2 back surgeries, neither of which completely resolved the issue.
Mm,
It would ebb and flow. I'd be good
right.
for a little while, and I'd be like super active, and things were great, and then all of a sudden the bottom would drop out, and I'd be on the floor, crawl into the bathroom, like
Jeez.
excessive, like
Yeah.
not able to get in and out of bed. I mean, it was
Right.
messy.
Wow.
But then it would, it would settle down, and then things were great.
Jeez, that must have been frustrating.
It was. And so for a long time, I was just like, this is bullshit. This is no way to live.
Right.
Um, and I ended up, it was right before I had my second back surgery. I found this video online. They initially had misdiagnosed it as hip bursitis. And I saw this video. It was Dr. Ben Benjamin, who was the head of the former Cambridge Muscular Therapy Institute. So I see like a doctor in a white coat,
Right.
but like treating people like on a massage table,
Huh.
like in a kind of like just manual therapy kind of way. I'm
Right.
like, well, that's awesome. Like, what
Right.
is this? Like, how
Right.
can I do this? And come to find out, like it was basically, he was just doing like this like medical massage,
Right.
basically is what he was doing.
Sure.
And that was sort of like the way in. I was like, I want to be able to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
Figure out how to like help myself, help other people. And it just was this whole rabbit hole of, the first step was like understanding the pain science, right? Like really understanding the pain science,
Sure.
not what they tell you, really how
Right.
pain
Right.
works. That, pain is output from the brain, not input from the tissues, which they aren't going to tell you.
Oh, are they really? See,
Yeah, they're not going to.
I always assumed it was just the brain
Mm-hmm.
saying so, because how else are you going to feel anything unless your brain's telling you to feel it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but they'll make it out like, oh, it's because this is, a certain way. That's why it hurts. And it's
Right.
really more of a risk assessment. So this
Right.
thing
Right.
happens, the brain makes a determination based upon prior experience as to whether or not, ooh, is this a problem? We're going to send some pain so they stop moving, that area as a protective measure. So I, got involved in that. And then I had always wanted to box. It was kind of one of those things where I was like, bucket list, kind of
Right.
things. And
Right.
just got to the point where I was like, I need to do this. It's something I want to do. It's something I need to do. So it all happened at just the right time. Because as I was starting to feel better for longer and longer spans and sort of playing with that idea of, pain as a construct really, and not just as an indication of structural damage. Because as soon as you think of structural damage, you're like, I can't move my body. I'm in
Yeah,
trouble.
that's true.
Right. So then I was like, no, it's actually not. And it wasn't until I started to compete in boxing, dealing with fear, yeah, in a way that was acceptable. And the best way I can describe it is like, you don't realize how much time in your life that you're fearful until you're in a situation where fear is acceptable. Right. So in like boxing, fear is acceptable. Like it's kind of normal
Right.
to
It's
have a little
it's
bit of
part
fear
of it.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm going to get punched in the face.
Right.
How do I feel about that?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it was that it opened up this whole awareness of negative emotions that I discovered that
That's
I was not
fascinating.
experiencing.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, because my brain said, oh, this is okay, this is normal, I was allowing all this stuff in, and I was like, holy crap, there's a whole plethora of emotional experience that I have suppressed
Oh, that's fascinating.
that I was not aware of. And that
Wow.
once that door opened of like, fear is normal when you're boxing, I'm like, my back hurts. oh my God, that was fear. Like it was fear that I was feeling. It wasn't really the structural thing.
Huh.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
kind of
very
a,
interesting. So this year, I'm not trying to plug my stuff at all, I promise. But this year, I've decided to go on this mental journey where each week I'm going to do something that's extremely uncomfortable, whether it scares me or it's just something I don't like. And I'm going to turn it into a YouTube series too, partially to hold myself accountable. Because if people are waiting for stuff, I can't back out. But yeah, I mean, simple examples would be I've never been on a plane because it scares me. Never taken a, like an ice bath sort of thing. But I'm really excited to hear your experience with embracing fear and how it altered things for you, because that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. Learn how to push through stuff,
That's exactly it. I mean, that's it. It's the absolute 100% unlock for everything.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what, for whatever reason, not to get too far into it and get like, but for me, I've got a PTSD diagnosis, and I put that in quotes, not because I'm trying to discount it or diminish it for anyone who's suffering from those things. But I believe that the symptoms, are the issue, not the diagnosis, we tend to kind of like hook on and like, it's, the issue isn't the PTSD. The issue is that what are the symptoms that are impacting my life?
Yeah, right.
So for me, I didn't get diagnosed until I was probably like 45. I finally decided, I had a traumatic incident when I was a kid, and like in my 40s, I was like, I think I need to figure this out.
Right.
And they were like, here you go. And, it was just a revelation to me. I'm like, oh, I can feel better. And, you don't know, especially when something happens when you're young. Right. Like you go through your whole life thinking this is how I'm supposed to feel, because you don't know any different.
This is my normal. So
it's my normal. Right. And then it was just like this Pandora's box, but in a really good way of like that emotional expansion and being able to really feel that. I call it marinate. That's the expression I use, because I believe that if you are willing to marinate in what I like to call gross emotions, you will absolutely crush anything, any goal you have, because that's it. That's the only thing that's holding us back, is that our unwillingness to feel that stuff.
Right, because all growth is uncomfortable. It's all a struggle, and if you can, no, that makes perfect sense. It's funny how it's something most of us don't think about, but once you hear it out loud, it just makes sense when you think about it. It really
does. And we spend so much time, chasing the positive, right? And of course, then that's the goal. You want to feel good.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I think it's our unwillingness to feel bad is what gets in the way of feeling good, because you just teeter on that cusp of like fear of rejection, fear of being judged, fear, all the fear.
We are so on the same page right now. I can't believe I'm about to do this series and we're talking about this too. I have an anxiety disorder, so definitely everything you're saying, it just, for sure, 100%.
Well, that's part of like the for me, the whole boxing thing was I had so much fear around fighting, not around the fighting itself. I was like, so I had my first fight lined up. And I'm like, what happens if I have a panic attack? Right. And that was real. I was like, shit, I don't want to make a fool out of myself. It wasn't really about losing. It was like, what if I get out there? I'm just like,
yeah.
So I was like, that's not going to happen. So I would intentionally, as I like to say, like marinate in the gross emotion. So I would like just in my mind's eye, I would like picture myself getting into the ring. I would allow that feeling of fear to like rise up in me. I would picture myself like getting into what fighters call the deep waters, where you're like way over your head and you're getting killed.
Like you're in the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would allow that to play, and I would allow myself to feel all of that discomfort, all that really negative crap that we tend to push away.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was, so it was I had done all this mental prep, right? I'd done all the physical prep. Like that part I wasn't worried about,
right.
But it was the mental prep that I was, more concerned with. And, it came time. I'm at the House of Blues in Boston. Like, I'm going to fight. And I'm like, oh my God. And, but I was ready. I was ready, but I thought I had aced it. It wasn't going to be an issue. And I was warming up up in the balcony, and the other people, the other fights were going on. So it was the music and the crowd and the lights, out of the
Yeah.
corner of my eye. And all of a sudden, here it came.
Oh.
And I actually have it on video. One of the guys from my gym was taking a video of me warming up with my coach. And you can literally see a panic attack in action. It's incredible.
Really?
So I'm like doing the mitts, we're going back and forth. And all of a sudden you can see my punches start to drop off. Like all of a sudden, like my arm is like leaden. And then I have no recollection of this.
Really?
I flex my head. It's all from the camera's behind me,
Right,
the phone's behind
right.
me. So you can see all of a sudden the punches just start looking sloppy and weak. And then I do this thing with my head where I start flexing my head back and forth, and then I shake my hands, and then I'm gone. I left the building.
Oh, for real?
Oh, for real.
Oh,
Out the door.
You just bailed.
Adios.
Yep. Enough of that.
Yep. Fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
That was it. It was
Definitely
real.
did
And I
one
was
of those.
gone, flee. And it wasn't, and I don't really think it was like, it was just, I got to get out of here. It was just this overwhelming urge of like, I'm even just doing, just this feeling of like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And I went outside. I'm behind the House of Blues. I'm like, oh, this is what we thought was going to, okay. We knew this was going to happen. It's going to be fine. You prepared for this. It's fine. And then my coach finds me out the back alley, and he's like, you're going to get grease on your boots. Get back in here. And I'm like,
Right.
and he's like, old school
Sure.
boxer. He's got no time I got PTSD,
for
right?
any mental stuff. Yeah. Right.
He does. He really does. But her persona is like
I got
old school, right?
Right,
And I'm like,
right.
yes, I got it. And then I got it together and got back in and won the fight, unanimous decision, and
That's fantastic.
that was it. Yeah.
And I bet it felt so good to be able to look back on that and be like, I pushed through and I got back in there.
Oh, it's the friggin' best.
Oh yeah.
I am like very I don't want to be the center of attention kind of person. For like, probably a good month afterwards, I was like, hey, oh hi, how's it going? You want to see my fight? You want to see my fight? You want to see my phone? You want to see my fight? 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 I mean, it was like, it is the best feeling ever. Better than anything. I get, it's like a drug. It is like incredible. That's incredible.
Fantastic.
At least for me, it was.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a great lesson for anyone listening too. I mean, even if you had gone back in and you had lost that fight, you still would have won the internal battle of getting back inside. So it still would have been a win even if you lost. So
absolutely.
Yeah, just getting back to it even when it's scary. It's going to feel so good after, and if you don't, it's not going to feel great after. Which, I mean, sometimes you're in such a bad place you can't, of course, but like if you're able to push through and you can do that, it's just it's no matter the outcome, such a good feeling.
It really is. And I think so much of boxing, I think those people don't realize is that so much of boxing is really not about the opponent.
Really?
It's about you.
Yeah.
It's your own. It's the fight is with you. The fight isn't with them. It's the fight, it's up here. It's what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I think that's my take on it. It's really figuring out, it's very much there's a great book, Zen and the Martial Arts by Joe Hyams, which I think really illustrates the idea of, he talks about how the dojo is a place to come in contact with your fears and your insecurities and all that, because in a dojo, right, it's fighting, it's the same thing.
Right.
Same thing, different martial art. Boxing's the same way, but it's that internal, what I look at, your internal dojo, right? Like the internal place where you're going to come into contact with your fear and your insecurity. And, I was supposed to fight in the Nationals in Reno in 2020, 2019. COVID's got me all messed up. Right at the start of COVID, right? What was that, 2019? I don't remember. Right at the start of COVID, I was supposed to fight that March. And the fight, it ended up getting canceled.
Right.
But, so Masters Division, right? And I was supposed to fight, it was a woman who was actually a professional MMA fighter, but because she had never had a pro boxing match, they still made the match. And when I found that out, I was like,
Yeah,
holy
right.
shit.
For
And
real.
that fear, like I felt a ton of fear around that. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And she's gonna, like I've been, and then I went online, I Googled her, and I, watched a couple of her fights, and I was like, then meditate is the wrong, I mean, I shouldn't say it's the right word, but it's not the word I use.
Yeah.
But it's more just, like I said, I just keep saying marinate. That's what
Yeah. Just
that's what
sit and
resonates for
process
me.
everything. Yeah, it
Just
makes
sit.
sense.
And I was just like, I watched the videos and I was like, oh man. And I just really started to think about it and started to let myself feel all that fear,
Mm,
that fear around, holy crap. And she was younger than me, and I'm going, okay, she's younger than me. Oh, she's this. Oh, she's that.
right.
Oh, she's that. And then all of a sudden the reality kind of hit me. I'm like, I saw the videos and I'm like, you know what? This is MMA. She's an MMA fighter. This is boxing. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at her boxing skills, and her boxing skills aren't what mine are.
Mm,
She can't kick me. She
right.
might be faster than me,
Right.
but she's not a better fighter than I am, not a better puncher, not a better boxer. Right. And all of a sudden, so like but I had to let myself feel like all that fear around it before I could kind of get to that conclusion of like, I'm going to kick her ass.
Yeah, right. Right.
Because all of a sudden the reality was, I was like, you know what? She's never been hit by anybody like me. Not in a
Mm,
million years. I know she hasn't, because I hit
right.
like a truck.
Right.
That's, and I don't often toot my own horn, but like that's what I got.
Right.
That's my thing, is
I
I
love
can
it.
hit like a truck.
I love it. How satisfying is it to punch someone in the face? Because I feel like that'd feel real good, and I've yet to do it. Do you ever feel bad for hitting someone?
Like
Yeah.
when it's for
Yeah, like a
real,
planned,
in the
like a
moment, in the like when it's the fight,
right.
no, because I go in there like, that's my
Right.
own thing. I got to
You
go in
get
there
into
because
your
I
own.
go in there like it's you or it's me, and it's not
Right.
going to be me.
Sure.
Um,
Makes sense.
but I for me it's more the energetic release, that just punching, like whether it's on the bag or whatever,
Just
is
in
super
general.
satisfying.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's weird because people will say, and I hate to stereotype, but a lot of times it's guys will say, "Oh, I could never be a fighter because I would just go ape shit, and I would go crazy, and I would like be breaking all the rules, and I'd be killing the other person." I'm like, no, you wouldn't.
Right.
No, you wouldn't, because if you are that out of control emotionally,
Oh
you're
yeah.
gonna get your ass kicked.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
people
because you
don't
gotta be
realize,
focused. Yeah.
you got to be focused. You got to be in control. When you
Right.
get enraged, like boxing is great for rage, like hitting the bag. Like I have
Sure.
rage hit the bag. But if
Sure.
you walk into a fight with that rage, you're
Yeah.
unhinged.
That's true.
And what happens is, right, like you get enraged, all that, what ends up happening is all of a sudden, and you can see it in people, um, all the blood diverts from your limbs. It all
Oh
goes to
really?
your organs to protect, because it's like that fight or
Uh
flight kicks
huh.
in. So your blood diverts from your organs. That's when you see fighters, they lose their legs. All of a sudden they start getting like wobbly, because they're running on the wrong kind of energy. They're running on
Interesting.
like that rage, that
Right. And is that usually when you
it's
start seeing like the flailing sort of thing
yes,
going?
yep. And all of a sudden they're like, no,
Right.
you see it a lot. You do
Yeah.
see it a lot. And there's a lot of people out there that I think, it sounds good, right? It sounds really,
Yeah.
it
Sure.
sounds intriguing. It
Yeah.
sounds like really kick-ass and
Yeah.
amazing, but the reality is it sucks in the
Yeah.
best possible way. But you know what I mean? Like
I think
it's
I know what
not
you
like,
mean.
oh wow, this is really super fun. It's like, oh,
Right.
this sucks,
Right.
but I love
Right. Right.
it.
It's true. I think we all, guys in particular, we've just seen too many action movies. I think that's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My coach, talks about it a lot, and one of the line that's often used is that it's being able to impose your will
Mm,
upon someone is really powerful.
yeah.
It's really powerful, and that to me is kind of it, more so than like the punching someone in the face. You know what I
Mm,
mean? It's more about the overall thing, as opposed to the individual, like I'm striking another person.
mm.
Because
Just
I
like,
mean, I know people that saw me, that they were like, oh my God, that was you, but you seem so nice. And I'm like, I am nice. It's
right.
boxing. I mean,
Right.
it's not a tea party. Like, what was I supposed to do?
Yeah, you can't go in friendly. Yeah.
Well, otherwise I shouldn't be here.
Right, for sure. This podcast is brought to you by Ape, which makes a whole lot of sense because I co-own Ape. So Ape is an all-natural and eco-friendly skincare company where we believe that the health of our customers and the health of the planet should always, always come before profit. Why wouldn't it? What is with these sketchy companies out there? We only make safe, natural, healthy, and eco-friendly products. So if you need any sort of skincare products, moisturizers, beard care products, bath and body products, we got soap, we got lip balm, we got all sorts of stuff going on. So head over to apebrand.co and you can find us at apebrand on social media. I love it. I love it. It's all so interesting to me. What jobs did you have before this? Before the boxing and before all your work?
I've done quite a few things. So I worked in the art and design field for a little while, and then I worked quite extensively with the autism population, doing teaching, various things, job coaching, and employment coordinating, on and off since I was in my early 20s. I just sort of kind of fell into it, and it's been something I've just really enjoyed. And that's about it. Yeah. It's been sort of this kind of back and forth between those, again, like sort of like that, like when it comes to like art, making a living out of art and design is kind of hard.
Yeah, sure.
Can be challenging. So I would kind of go back into that and back and forth between those couple of things.
Did working with autistic people, do you think that helped prepare you for working with people mentally? Because I don't know how to word this properly. It could potentially be, in simple terms, more difficult to work with someone who's autistic potentially, just because you're not used to that as much. So then when you're working with someone else, you'd be even more prepared, sort of thing.
Absolutely. I believe that I think that everyone should work with some sort of special needs population at some point in their life, especially early on, because it's just the perspective you get is so valuable. And years ago, just even talking to people like, oh, I had a bad day at work. I'm like, you don't even know a bad day.
Right.
Like you don't even know a bad day.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, it's like, so rewarding.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But it's hard, it can be really hard and really challenging.
Absolutely. So what is you gave the general description of what you do for work. What does like hands-on day-to-day look like for you?
What does it look like? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do, I'm kind of doing a hybrid right now. So I have a lot of athletes that I work with doing like sports recovery work. So I do a lot of cupping therapy. With them. So more like physical, like, I'm beat up at the gym. I've got some pro bodybuilders and pro fighters, pro MMA fighters that I work with. That's more for like the recovery piece, like just getting their bodies back in action. And I do some education around that, because what happens is, with an athlete, they get this ache, pain, something. They go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you've got a strain and you're such and such, and you should take 4 weeks off or 6 weeks off. And then all of a sudden, a lot of times, especially with fighters, you don't have that kind of time.
No,
you don't have 6 weeks.
Yeah, I would throw everything off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to get people back in action as quick as possible. On the coaching end, the mind, body, chronic pain stuff, best way I can describe it is I help people I coach them through figuring out kind of what the negative emotional stuff is that's holding them back. Figure out how they can get in touch with that negative emotion, like I was able to do.
Right.
And then how to move through it. Like how to sort of, I have this technique that I use. The best way I can describe it is, you're familiar with like a HIIT workout, those interval HIIT workouts.
Right.
It's like an emotional HIIT workout. So when you think about it, right, like if you're, anybody, athlete, anybody, and you want to, let's just say like six, I always use building abs as an example. Like you want a 6-pack abs, right?
Right.
That's process sucks. Right. There's no one that will tell you that walks around with a six pack, like getting a six pack was fun.
Right.
It's miserable.
Right.
It's the diet and the exercise, and it's work, and it's hard. It's not something you can just breeze through. It's the emotional piece is the same thing. So in order to be able to be successful, you have to be able to put yourself through that discomfort. And I help sort of guide people through that discomfort, like figure out where in their body they feel that emotional discomfort.
Right.
And then be okay with it, and then sit with it, and then not run away from it. I do these like coaching sessions where like, okay, we're going to stay with that, instead of like, if you're at home and all of a sudden this emotion hits you, it's like, what do? People don't realize you pick up your phone, right? All of a sudden you go get something to eat, you can you make yourself a drink, you put on the TV. Distraction. Yeah. We're going to distract it. That's what we do. We either, there's no shame in it. It's normal. But we either want to distract it, suppress it, repress it. Like that's what we do.
Yeah,
so I help people.
Me up.
Yeah. And me too. And that's what made me, what opened my eyes to all of it is like once I figured out how to stop doing that, I was like, it was like I said, it was like a major unlock. I was like, holy crap, this is incredibly powerful. And I don't hear anybody talking about this. I don't hear anybody talking about like intentionally putting themselves in an uncomfortable emotional state as a way to conquer their fear and their negative emotions. Because usually we're like, oh no, I can't. That's painful. No, yeah, it's painful. That's why you know you've got to go towards it.
Yeah. Is there, I'm going to lie and say this is for the listener. This is more for me. I'm going to exploit you for a second. Is there a way to initially, like the first step towards getting yourself to process things that you don't even necessarily realize you're feeling, Is there what's the first step to start to let those thoughts in? Is there a specific first step?
Yeah, the first thing I do is I run people through a little thing. We can do it right now if you want. It's a little thing called, it's a technique called focusing. It was developed by Gene Genlin. He was Dr. Gene Genlin. He was a philosopher.
Yeah.
But this technique was developed like back in the 60s and 70s, and what they looked at was patients that were receiving therapy. They were trying to figure out what was the common denominator between patients that were getting better and patients that weren't. And the ones that were getting better were the ones that were better able to tap into that emotional piece. So, what I do is I, invite people, I just say, all right, I just invite you to kind of close your eyes, and we're going to try to, from all the things you have going on right now, right? Just pick out one thing you want to work on, or one thing that's been kind of, causing you trouble, or, something you want to address.
Right.
And when you bring that to mind, find a place in your body where you feel that. Figure out, and usually it's the stomach or the throat or the chest, right? It's usually one of those are the hot spots. And when you find that sensation in the body, hang on to it. Don't run away from it. Just feel it, be with it. And then once you kind of get that feeling there, and you kind of can hang on to it, try to come up with a word or a phrase or an image that kind of captures that, what they call a felt sense. What's the word or phrase or image that kind of captures that felt sense? And then spending time kind of toggling back and forth between that sensation in the body and that word or phrase or image. And kind of playing with that and figuring out, how does that resonate for you? Is that something that, that you're actually feeling? And then just sort of seeing what kind of shifts take place. And what ultimately ends up happening is it's oftentimes what they come up with is, number one, usually pretty profound. They're like, whoa, like what just happened?
Right.
But it's really nothing. I mean, I don't mean nothing. I mean, it's big, but it's not like it's just their own experience. Right. I'm not waving a magic wand. You've got it inside you. I'm just like directing it. And then they're able to kind of say, wow, this is something that I wasn't really aware of. I just did someone I was working with the other day, and she kind of thought it was something else. And then she goes, I realize now, she goes, what I'm feeling now, the word is resistance. I'm feeling this resistance to feeling. I'm feeling there's this resistance to kind of want, because she was going through some issues with grief. She'd lost her dad, and she said, I'm feeling this resistance. And we
Right.
really just, played with that. And then what I do is I have it set up almost like I said, it's almost like a hit workout, but like I have it set up with like rounds, like boxing. So you do a round, because I love neuroplasticity. So I've got some like neuroplastic tricks in there too,
right.
where I'm like, okay, so now so if it's resistance, we're going to grab onto that feeling of resistance. And I want you to sit in that and feel it. And timer goes on. Okay, feel it, feel that resistance. And then you get like a work and then rest, just like in a hit workout. So you're going to feel that resistance. Okay, now rest. You get 10 seconds off, shake it off. Right. And then we're going to go back into it again. And each interval, the sitting with that feeling of resistance increases over time. So you're going to do like the first round is like only like 30 seconds of feeling it. And then you ultimately build up to like 2 or 3 minutes of sitting in that resistance. But I'm guiding you, right? So it's not, you're not on your own going, oh, I don't want this. Like, I'm here, like, we're going to take a break. It's going to be cool. So it's like structured. And I think people feel like it's safe because they're not on their own sort of exploring this territory that feels so foreign. I'm like, so, and I know, it sounds wild, but it's pretty powerful. It's pretty potent stuff when you can spend time with that thing you realize that you were pushing away. And then when you sort of open the door and you let it in, you're like, it actually isn't so bad. I mean, it's uncomfortable and I don't like it, but it's not as big and as bad as I was making it out to be.
Right.
Because it's getting back to the resistance. I mean, it really, at the root of it all, it is resistance. We don't want to feel the things. We don't want to feel the feels.
Right. I'm just sitting here processing everything you said. I'm absorbing it right now. This is a lot of information for me to take in, and I love it. No, this is right up this is something I've really been, because I was diagnosed ADHD, OCD, and anxiety at like, I don't know, 12 years old or something. I was on, medication for like 15 years, went off it for a bit, went back on the anxiety, but I've been trying to, I've just been trying to pinpoint stuff. If you don't know what's causing something, how do you address it? So learning how to pinpoint, try to process, try to just, I guess you're essentially figuring out who you are kind of in the process, like because your thoughts are there, but you're not necessarily thinking about your own thoughts all the time. So it's like it's like a background process working at a computer that you don't even realize is going on back here.
Definitely. And I think what I like about it is it takes the over analytical ego mind piece out of it.
Right.
That like, I'm feeling like this because of this. It takes all that judgment or that explanation or that realization, like, you're like, well, why am I feeling this way? Everything's great. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's because then all of a sudden you start beating yourself up. It's like the experience is the experience. And your body holds so much information that getting back to that separation between the mind and the body. We're the result of them doing that in the 17th century. Because there was a time, I believe, that people walking around whole, like realizing that the mind and the body and the spirit it's all one thing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now we're like, here we are now, it's 2022, we're in the modern medical machine, Western medicine, everything's, diagnose it. And, and I don't have anything against a diagnosis, but I believe oftentimes that diagnosis is what shackles us, because we go, oh, I have this, period.
That's very true. I can say firsthand, I agree with that, because like even when it comes to anxiety, like I'm like, how can I learn to process this better? But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, but I was diagnosed with anxiety, so how much can I actually do myself? Like it is what it is. I can't, they said it's permanent. You can't like cure yourself of it. So what can I do? That sort of thing.
That's absolutely, I was told the same thing. They were like, oh, you had a traumatic childhood event.
Right.
That damages your amygdala. It's permanently broken. That's what I was told.
Right.
It's broken.
Yeah.
I'm like, not true. Not true at all. Because when you think about it, basically you're conditioned. Trauma is a conditioned response. It's an adaptation that has lost its usefulness.
Right. It's like your brain trying to protect itself, but overreactively.
It's an overgeneralization, right? So like, there was a time where those behaviors made sense and were healthy and safe for you because you needed them for a certain reason, and now it's generalized and it's happening for other times. So it's a conditioning issue. You can decondition that behavior. You can decondition that, but we get lost in we need to talk about it and we need to write the problem down, and it's so somatic. It's in the body. It's stuff in the tissues. It's even if you look at when you're embarrassed, right? So you're embarrassed and your face flushes. That's a physiological reaction. Those are things that are happening outside our control.
True.
So we can exert some control over that if we put our minds to it. We can say, all right, I'm going to work on. And that's where I feel like, intentionally working on experiencing the negative emotions is so powerful, because when you're in charge and you're intentionally putting yourself into this uncomfortable state, it's very empowering because you don't feel so afraid of it because you did it to yourself. It's not being done to you. So intellectually, like, okay, I'm doing this and I can stop doing this anytime I want.
But I'm going to keep going.
As opposed to like something happens and you're like,
I'm trapped. Yeah.
When you're the one doing it, you're like, okay. And now when you come in contact with that thing, however it manifests in you, it becomes more and more familiar. So then it doesn't catch you off guard. When the things do happen, they make you go, you go, oh, it's just that. It's that thing.
Right. I guess it's the same as practicing at anything. Like if you try skateboarding for the first time, you're gonna fall and it's gonna suck. But if you've skateboarded 1,000 times, you know what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to recognize the pitfalls. You're like, oh, because the conditions are this. Right. Oh, I know, whatever this is, there's gravel or whatever.
Right.
You start to recognize those pitfalls, and now your ADD, your anxiety, instead of being, I have ADD, it can be just as simple as I struggle with paying attention.
Yeah.
I'm feeling anxious, not I have anxiety.
Right.
I'm feeling anxious.
Right.
And that's normal. And then when you come into contact with that and you say, okay, so this is what anxiety feels like in me.
Right.
You like recognize that quote unquote bad guy. You know what he looks like now.
Yeah.
And so now he's not taking you by surprise anymore. You're like, oh, all right, I know this guy. I've seen him before.
Right.
I know what he's all about, and this is what's going to happen. So I don't need to be so afraid of it because it's not so foreign. It's not so scary, because it's like when they talk about taking it off the mat, right? Like with yoga. I'm not a yoga person, clearly, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you know what I mean? Like when they talk about, like you can put yourself in this kind of, all you want. But the reality is, in the real world, if you can't take that apply it, what's the point of even doing it?
Right.
Because life doesn't happen on a yoga mat. Life happens out in the world. So like, how can you figure out how to do these things and be able to apply them outside of these specified circumstances?
I didn't know this podcast was going to be like, I was excited to have you on, but I didn't know it was going to be like, whoa. All right. Before I forget, do I have your permission to use a couple clips of you talking in this video series I'm about to do?
Of course. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're like saying stuff. I'm going to take your voice and we'll put it in the background while I'm doing it. This is perfect. This is perfect. Like, I feel like I should owe you money for this podcast episode already. So you mentioned this before, but like, what drives you? What's your motivation? Is it really, I mean, it started partially with a desire to help yourself, and it sounds like there's a strong desire to help other people. Are those the main things that drive you?
I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, and sort of a frustration, a frustration, feeling like nobody had the answers for me.
Yeah. That's the worst.
Feeling like, right. Feeling like, where are the answers? Where are my answers? Why can't I get any? Why is there nobody that seems to understand?
Yeah.
Why, why does it seem like I'm struggling with this, and I don't want, because what, to me, the answer is that's just the way you are. I don't believe that. That's bullshit.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I don't accept. I just don't accept it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's just you. You're fucked. You're broken.
Yeah. No, that's a great lesson for anyone listening to. Sometimes you can't accept what people tell you is the case, whether it's your dreams and goals and people saying, oh, that's too hard, you're not gonna be able to pull that off, why don't you just get this 9 to 5 over here, it's safe, or it's your actual brain or body, like there, if you believe there's more, there's probably more.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I think that I think the people, I think you have to look at who benefits. Who benefits from us feeling weak and disempowered and that we can't change ourselves.
Right.
Who benefits from that?
Right.
And then that's what all of a sudden you start going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And they're like, here, and there's nothing wrong with medication.
Sure.
But like, take this medication.
Right.
Do this thing. Like, take this thing that you're going to pay us. You know what I mean? Like, someone benefits.
Right.
Someone's got to benefit.
Yeah, you always got to be evaluating all
there's
that.
no money. There's no money in self-healing.
Yeah, there's no money in people and everyone being well. I met this doctor who is in into plant-based eating and all that, and trying to cure physical ailments through healthy foods and all that sort of stuff. And he said when he went to medical school, they went around the classroom and they asked everyone, why are you here, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to stop people from getting sick before they have to come to us. And the teacher pulled him to the side and said, you can't say that in front of other people here, because they're not going to want you at this school, part of these medical associations. That's not how this works. And it's just mind-boggling when I heard that. But makes sense. It's a business.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
So is there anyone you look up to in particular, personal or professionally?
I'm just trying to think, like, heavy rotation, like right now, like looking up. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. I love her work on shame. All because I believe that's fear. That's all about working with fear. Yeah. Big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. I love his message.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think he's interesting because when he talks about, the just putting yourself out there and the being consistent, this is the stuff I ran into, and I'm sure you have as well, talking about issues with anxiety. It sounds great to be going live every 5 seconds and having your phone up, but when you have issues with anxiety, you can feel like every cell in your body is screaming at you, no, this is not safe. Not safe.
Right.
He talks about his mom and he credits her with, building that emotional piece in him.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I'm like, all right, so that's the goal. Like, how do you get there?
Yeah.
And the reality is that it's not going to be the way he says it for him.
Right.
Because if you struggle with these things, it's not that simple as to just say, but you just got to be consistent.
You get to that point. Yeah.
You just got to figure it out. I mean, I'm trying to think how many podcasts I've done, like 5 or 6 maybe.
Yeah.
But like the first one, I thought I was going to throw up.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And every fiber of my being was like, stop it,
Right.
And I can't listen to anything. Like, anytime I do a podcast, anything, I can't listen to them afterwards.
You can't now?
Nope. Nope. I won't, because I'll never do another one again.
You start to self-evaluate too much.
Because I'll be like, you sound like an idiot.
It's no real fun for me when I have to go back and edit my speaking in these.
And it'll get better, right?
Sure.
And I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, it absolutely does.
You just got to keep, but it's exposure. You just got to keep exposing yourself to it, and that's what I find. What I like about him is that he just has that, just put it out there, put it out there. And for him, it's, I can do it 20 times a day.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, but if that's for him, but if you're over here, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to shoot for 20 times a year.
Right.
I mean, because you have to start somewhere. You just have to be consistent. And even if it's just once a week, or, you know what I mean? Like, but you have to just keep moving it, keep moving that needle and keep doing it so that it, it may not ever feel comfortable, but it's not going to feel like, I'm going to throw myself out the window.
Right. No, I find Gary fascinating because he talks very bluntly, and he doesn't necessarily get get too deep into anything, but when you analyze his messages, they are very deep. You know, even though he's saying them quick and he's swearing while he's saying them and he's loud, he's actually saying like profound if you altered the words, it's very profound things that you'd read in teachings and, you know, different cultures and religions even. It's just just funny how at first glance he could seem very different than he is to some people, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. And I know he turns a lot of people out, but
yeah,
he definitely, and because that's the thing, he distills it down to his essence. He doesn't BS it.
No.
He's not going to put a lot of fancy, you know, whatever on it. It's
Right.
He's very real, you know, and it is. I think it's his own, you know, the Tao of Gary Vee. Right?
Yes.
And he's got his own, you know, he's got his own thing, which is fantastic.
No,
you know, and I think it's, you know, it's something to aspire to, just having that willingness to be like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to put myself out there.
Yeah.
And risk the rejection and risk people saying you sound like a freaking moron.
Right.
You know, when he talks about his early days at Line TV, you know, it was a couple of years and like nobody was watching.
Right.
There's no way I would have been able to do that. Like I've done, you know, there's things I've done. I've gone. I did a live workshop a couple of years ago about the mind-body connection, and nobody showed up.
Right.
But I pretended people were there. Because I had to.
Yeah.
I'm going live for this workshop. And then I was like, oh, frick, there's no one here.
Yeah.
So I kept the camera on the screen. And I was like, thanks, everyone, for joining me. Oh, my God. Like, because what else am I going to do?
Sure.
And it was horrible. And I hated every second of it.
Right.
But I was like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to secure with you today and talk relatively comfortably about what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm not 100% comfortable. I'm sweating, I'll be honest, you know.
Well, if it helps, it comes off as completely relaxed and comfortable.
It's not. But it's not.
Well, you're putting on a good show.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
No.
You got to do it.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people don't think about, even if it's, like you said, something where it's in its own way a failure at the time. That's how it feels, at least. It's going to help you later on, one way or the other.
Definitely.
So there's no real failure, even if you technically failed.
Right. And that's all part of having a growth mindset, right? Of like that growth mindset, like failure isn't failure. Failure is just another experience, another opportunity, building, building. It's not all going to be perfect. You're not going to knock it out of the park from,
and
the first shot.
If you did, you wouldn't learn very much.
No.
Yeah. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Marine biologist.
I feel like that's very common.
Yeah. Marine biologist. Yeah. We used to go down the Cape every year for a couple of weeks. And oh my God, I was like the biggest nerd. I had like my mask and my net, and I would oh my God. Yep. And I would just be, with my getting little fish, right offshore and put them in the bucket and staring at them for like I'd put them back, of course, something like this big.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, like probably for me, it was a time being in the water and being at the beach and being even underwater. I felt safe, right? I felt very safe and calm and, which was not, in retrospect, which was not something I felt other times at that point in my life. I had a lot of, a lot of fear, a lot of issues. And again, just in retrospect, you kind of look back and that's why. That's why you like that so much.
Up. Yeah.
It all makes sense because it felt very, very safe and very comfortable and very, I felt good.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for me, like the nature photography and stuff, it started with me just going for like nature walks with my grandfather when I was a kid. And then, I'm assuming what pushed me towards the photography was just that internal good feeling I got from that without even realizing it. And then I just inevitably transferred to, nature photography and stuff like that. That safe space that you feel inside. You don't even realize it till later on.
Yeah, it's funny when you can kind of go back and you connect the dots of like, oh, that's why that felt.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the connection. It's feeling connected to nature and the earth, not to get too about, but it's that grounded sort of feeling of like, all right,
absolutely.
I'm good. I'm safe. I'm good here.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I got a couple personal questions. You just have to let me know if you want to skip them. I will cut this out. you already kind of mentioned this, so I don't know if this is going to line up with earlier, but have you ever had any mental or physical health issues that you've had to push through to get where you are today?
Oh yeah.
I feel like, yeah.
Diagnoses. So I've got a diagnosis of PTSD, severe anxiety, and then the degenerative disc disease,
Right. It's a lot.
spinal stenosis,
Yeah.
4-level herniation. But right, I mean, all that at this point now I realize I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I just say no. Like,
Yeah.
that's okay, but
it is what it is. Moving on. Yeah.
exactly. I'm
Right.
going to figure out how to work with it and work around it.
I love it. For me, in my work life, as a business owner and doing my own thing, there are days where things just start to seem pointless. Like it's days where it just seems like everything's going wrong. This is all so difficult. Do you ever have days like that? And what do you do to push through them?
I usually will, when I don't think about it, when I'm just very reactive, I tend to just get overly analytical, and then that's not helpful. But it's usually not very effective.
Right.
But usually what ends up being the thing that works is stepping back, saying, you know what, I need a break from this.
Yeah.
And I'll go outside and, go for a walk. Just for me, it's just getting outside. It doesn't have to be fancy.
Yeah.
I don't have to like do a whole ritual. It's just get outside, outside, look at the sun, get some fresh air.
It makes so much sense that works for so many people. Cause originally humans would have always been out. That's our natural habitat right there. Right. We're sealed off in the world when we're in here. So it makes sense that to have a nice release, we go back to what's essentially our home outside. Yeah. It just adds up. Do you ever think to yourself you'd be better off with like a traditional 9 to 5, less work, better hours? No?
I'll work 80 hours a week for myself so I can avoid working 40 for someone else, right? Isn't that the quote? But it is so true. No,
it's very true. Yeah, no. Working for someone else, I'm like, I need $100 an hour. Working for myself, I'm like, I can make $1 an hour and make this work.
Yeah. I think there are just some people that are wired that way that are just,
I think so too. Yeah, it's interesting how different we all are. Going forward, what are you hoping to accomplish? Are you already basically where you want to be? Are you content, or are you still now?
No, I definitely want to bring this idea of embracing negative emotions to a larger audience, because like I said, I think it's incredibly powerful. Like the work that I've done with people.
Just this quick conversation sounds, I can already pick up on how much potential it seems like it has.
Yeah, it's really wild. And like I said, it's not, and the beauty of it, it's not complicated, right? It doesn't require special tools.
Yeah.
You don't need to, do a whole thing. You don't need to have a whole, it's just all you need is you. You don't, it doesn't need to be, because I have a tendency to sometimes, as a way to avoid, right, I'll overcomplicate things. It's it's a coping skill, right?
Yeah.
So it's, and I struggle with that, when I was first sort of trying to, because basically what I did, I was trying to reverse engineer my own process, right? So like I was able to figure this out for myself,
right?
And then I was like, how did I don't know what I even did, but how did I do it?
Right.
And then in an effort to sort of reverse engineer it, I felt like it wasn't enough. So I was like, oh, let me research it and add all this extra stuff and like make it harder and make it a whole thing. And it's all like, man, it doesn't need to be.
Right.
So now I've kind of, come full circle again and come back to like, it is that simple. And I want to be able to, I said, I'm right now I'm working on trying to implement this on a larger scale. Like, how can I work this into, like, I've got a class I'm working on where it's going to be like almost like like I said, like emotional hit, where you're going to do emotion, negative emotion intervals with the, like stuff that I do with the clients one-on-one.
Well,
bringing it to a larger audience.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough thing with what you do, because you doing exactly what you do is not scalable, because there's just one of you, and you can't be doing 2 at a time.
Right.
So you thinking like online classes or something like that? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's my plan, is kind of, working on an online class. I actually was just talking to a client, about it the other day. And like I said, it's very, it's very new. The format that I'm working with now is like very new.
Yeah.
And we had sort of talked about I was kind of looking for feedback from her, and she's like, no, I said, I have this like vision in my mind of like, a bunch of people in a room, like it's a yoga class, but it's not yoga.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Where like, yes, it can be online, but even, just having like, a collective of people sort of all working on this of like, wherever you're at. Okay. So, figure out what your thing is, figure out what that word is, that's that stuck feeling. And then, we're going to sit with it, and we're all doing it together. So it's okay. Like, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. It makes sense. I mean, I think it's usually more maybe leaning towards religious where I've seen it before, but you see like these retreats where people, they'll sit in a big circle and meditate or do whatever they're doing. But it seems like that would really work, what you're talking about. I would definitely sign up for that if you did an online thing. So
sure, all right, yeah.
So get on it. If you could tell the younger version of yourself one thing to help them on their journey to reach where you are today, what would it be?
I saw this question. It's always such a good one. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Because I think that, I feel like where I'm at now, I don't think there was any shortcut to getting here. I don't think there was some way I could have done it differently.
Yeah, looking back, yeah.
So in the time that I was feeling, overwhelmed and confused and lost, being like, you're going to be fine. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's for all of us. I mean, I think that's, you're going to be fine. You're going to figure this out. You're going to get to it. There's no magic bullet, unfortunately.
Right. A lot of hard work. And yeah, especially, in the moment, at least for me, when I was a kid, everything seemed like the end of the world, especially if my anxiety was involved. Everything was catastrophic. So being able to look back and know that I didn't need to freak out the way I did every single time. If I could have just taken some breaths, everything's going to be fine. Yeah. And now for some questions that I asked at the beginning of the podcast. So what is your favorite movie or one of your favorite movies?
Godfather.
And,
yeah. Probably The Godfather. I mean, there's so many. But it's just, it doesn't matter. Like anytime, any place, anywhere, I'll watch it. I don't care if it's 5 minutes in, 20 minutes in. Doesn't matter.
Just go with it. How many times have you seen it?
Not three.
Not three.
But
you're out on
three. But one for sure. I mean, one is it. But the list is. I mean, I love movies. So.
Oh yeah, me too.
That's my big
That's
one.
A safe bet. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working? You have a specific hobby or anything?
I love photography. I like nature photography in particular.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
I like
awesome.
to be outside and take pictures of nature and animal, birds and
I
trees and all that. It forces me to be in the moment. So
yeah. Oh no, I couldn't agree more. I actually used to be a professional photographer.
Oh wow.
And I got my start by just going into nature parks and photographing particularly birds, just because there are so many, easiest access out of all the animals. But something I've really realized looking back now is that it was like a very meditative thing that was happening.
That's exactly why.
You have to like hyper focus on it, but it's not like a stressful hyper focus. It's like a relaxed focus, and it just clears your mind completely.
That's why I love it.
Yeah. I got to get back to it because I've been stressed out lately. All right. Do you have a favorite band or a favorite song?
I'm a kind of a God, that's such a loot. I don't know. So many. I mean, I love classic rock. I love Motown.
Yeah.
Not really anything. I used to be a big Dave Matthews fan, and not that I don't like them anymore, but I used to be like a big Dave head, like would go to all the shows.
Sure.
But I like music.
Yeah.
Of almost all kinds.
That's how I am.
Not a country fan.
No,
I shouldn't say this. Not pop country. Like Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings.
I was gonna say I've heard this debate recently. Because I saw like a TikTok video where this like really Southern guy saying you don't hate country music, you hate mainstream pop country.
Yes.
And that's interesting. Yeah, they do seem very different.
I like anything that that you can. I soul blues. I love blues. Like anything that you can that makes you feel.
Right.
You know, if it makes me feel something, I'm all about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Love it. All right. So if you could go on vacation right now for free anywhere in the world instead of having to talk to me anymore, where would you go?
Italy.
Italy. Interesting. I want to go to
Never
Italy.
been. I always
No.
wanted to go.
Yeah.
Going to Costa Rica for the first time next month. So I'm
Oh,
super psyched
nice.
about
Oh,
that.
that sounds fun. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah, we're going
why
for like 10 days, but
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I'm
awesome.
psyched.
So why Italy?
I don't know. Maybe The Godfather. I've always been like bizarrely fascinated. I took Italian in high school. I'm not
Really?
Italian,
Right.
clearly. But I've always been fascinated by Italy and Italian
Right.
culture,
Interesting.
the mafia. Even I mean, in high school, I wrote like a term paper on Jimmy Hoffa,
Oh,
like and
really?
his connections with the mafia. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, but just all of that I just find very intriguing. Maybe just because it's so different,
It
I guess,
is.
from
Yeah.
me and my own personal
Absolutely.
experience.
So
And
one
I think I was just going to say, I think part of it too is I feel like culturally they're a very embodied culture. You know, they
yeah.
really,
It's like a lot of
you know what I'm saying?
heritage and
Yeah, they
family and
really
all that.
feel their heritage and feel
Right.
their people, and it's just I feel like I would imagine, having not been there, but I would
Right.
imagine it's a very distinctive vibe when you're there, like you
For
feel
sure.
like you're in Italy.
Yeah. No, definitely. All right. So one day you're going to go to Italy and join the mafia. That's what I heard. I really appreciate you being on. I had a great time chatting with you. Like genuinely, it was
Yeah.
a lot of interesting stuff. I think the timing is crazy with this, YouTube journey I'm going on this year. So it was very fascinating to hear about that too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But I would love to have you on again sometime, or even have you on my other podcast, because I think you have a lot of good information to share. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love that.
All right. Oh, where can people find you? Find more info?
Sure. So I did write this down. Excuse me. I knew my cat would not. She would not
No, it's
sit tight for
fine.
this. She would definitely not sit tight for this. And but you're lucky because you didn't get the butthole. Because usually she on her giant butthole. The name of my business is Knockout Wellness.
Knockout Wellness.
So knockoutwellness.com is the website. And I have right now, I'm doing a free webinar January 26th. And it's really
nice.
just about, how I knocked out chronic pain.
Yeah.
So witty, I know. And really just to talk about my story, kind of just like how we did, and kind of, I'm going to work through some of those, emotional experiencing sort of things. It really just, the goal of it is just to open people's eyes to kind of the possibilities of like, hey, listen, here's where I was at.
Right.
And here's what worked for me.
Yeah.
And this is what worked, and I think sometimes just talking to someone else that has been through it and was able to find their way out is really powerful for a lot of people.
For sure.
That education piece, just opening their minds to it.
Yeah.
So if you go on the website, there's a link under free webinar that you can sign up for. And then the other thing I have also is that I have a little, like a podcast promotion that if people want to do a free consultation with me for 30 minutes, if you just click book now, and then you go under January podcast promotion, you can click the link and book a 30-minute consult, and I can, just one-on-one talk about what I do, what I offer. I'm really, like right now, I'm just trying to, certainly clients, of course, are ideal, but just really, trying to build awareness about, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like you were like, you get it.
Right.
But I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that are like,
that's terrible. Right. Right.
And the people that get it are like so all in. It's amazing. I could, like all of a sudden I thought, it's fun.
That's how I am here talking about it. I'm like, yeah, awesome, let's do it.
I didn't. You'll have to sign up for the consultation.
Yeah, I probably will. Yeah, it's I didn't think about the kind of resistance you'd get to this sort of thinking and process. Yeah.
There's been a lot, and I don't mean like in necessarily in a negative way, but like, certain thing, different Facebook groups, and I'm like, well, here's what I did, and people are like, that sounds like a terrible idea, and then sort of like talking about, because I'll talk about trauma and trauma symptoms and things, and people are like, well, that's irresponsible, and people try to what's the word I'm looking for? Make their trauma precious. This
Mm,
precious little thing that, oh my gosh, we can't possibly disrupt it. Oh, because then the world's just going to come to an end. And I don't buy that. You know,
right.
I believe that the way through it is just to feel the uncomfortable feelings
Yeah.
and move on. And we have this tendency, and I'm going to probably get myself in trouble with this one, but I feel like with social media, the awareness piece has been good, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because with social media, this awareness, we then wrap ourselves in this sort of cloak of like, I have trauma, I have
Yeah.
PTSD. Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, I have trauma, period. And then there's no, like, there's
Yeah.
nothing to move on from.
No, that's really interesting that you say that because I'm supposed to be wrapping things up and now I have more questions for you.
Right.
I'll be quick.
No, it's
Yeah,
fine.
what are your thoughts on people like openly telling other people this and this and this is a trigger for me, so don't mention it? Because I hear that and I think I've got like 500 things that are a trigger for me, honestly, and I would never think to ask other people to not bring them up because I need to. That's a me thing.
I think that's the worst thing going. I
Yeah.
think the safe spaces and the trigger alerts are the worst thing going because I believe, you know what the trigger is? Your own nervous system,
Right. Right.
not other people. It's you. You
Yeah.
trigger yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you trigger yourself, and everyone's triggers are unique to their own nervous system and their experiences. And we
Right.
can't expect the world to bend to our will. You know,
Yeah.
we can't. It's not normal. It's just
Yeah.
not.
You
I mean,
can't always control your surroundings. Yeah.
you can, and to expect it, and this goes back to, you know, and it's interesting how, you know, when you think about, you know, other experiences, how they all tie in my experience working with, I have this boy I was working with who had autism,
Hmm.
and I did family work, and so like parent coaching, trying to help them, you know, sort of navigate his difficulties. And if you know, people that know anything about autism is that they, you know, people with autism can be somewhat rigid in their
Right.
routine and want things to be a certain way.
Sure.
And where they lived, there was a bridge from the school to the house that they would have to go over. And the boy got very rigid about, you know, I have to go home this very certain way.
Mhm,
This is the
mhm.
way it has to be done. And I worked with mom about, you know, I know that you don't want him to be upset because
Right.
if she didn't do it, he'd pitch a fit.
Yeah.
And I said, I know you don't want him to be upset, but the reality is you can't control the world for him. And you have to get him used to being comfortable, or not necessarily comfortable, just tolerating going a different way.
Mm.
Because it's not helpful or healthy for him to only have this one way
Yeah.
of being. It's like a trauma response. It's no
Right.
different.
Yeah.
What a trauma response is, when you have PTSD, nothing's a choice anymore.
Right.
Right? It's only, I could only be like this. It's
Right.
only like this. So we had this conversation, and I was, you know, she's a wonderful woman and wanted the best for him, and it broke her heart to see him upset. And I was like, you know, it makes me sound like the bad guy, but I'm like, you know what? The tears are going to be worth it because he needs to understand.
Yeah.
He needs to learn a different way of being. Well, long story short, there was construction. She didn't take my advice because it was too hard. That was the thing. She couldn't tolerate his negative emotions, right? So
Right.
they had construction on the bridge, and she had to go a different way. And she had been doing this with him for like 3 years of going this very
So he's
specific
so
way.
set in his ways.
He had a meltdown to end all meltdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, it's next level.
Yeah.
And that was when she finally said, "Oh my God, I get it now." And,
Yeah.
and I view that the whole safe space trigger thing the same exact way. You need to learn how to work with your own nervous system.
Yeah.
You can't expect the world to bend to the demands of your nervous system because it's just not realistic.
It just seems like there's a much better way to handle it, because inevitably, even if you try your hardest to keep whatever thought, whatever words out of your life, eventually you're going to be, I don't know, walking through a mall and you're going to overhear someone saying it. And then what? You just going to collapse on the floor? Like,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the fetal position in the mall, like
Yeah.
for real.
right.
We need to learn how to adapt. You have
Yeah.
to learn how to adapt.
It's
And if your
just
nervous
that-
system short circuits,
Yeah.
you got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's just that, right back to that fear thing. You know, it doesn't feel good to have to deal with this, so everyone's trying to avoid it, which makes sense if you don't think about it for too long. But then when you really
Mhm.
analyze it, it's not a long-term solution. It sounds like you have very much a blend of a nurturing mindset and a empathic mindset, but then also, forcing people to face what they don't want to face. It sounds like a good blend to me. Well, I really appreciate you being on, though.
Thank you.
Let's definitely do this again sometime soon, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, take care.
You too.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do consider subscribing and turning on notifications. You can even throw in like a like and a comment. That would be a huge help. And if you're just listening to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms, please do subscribe. And also, if you could leave a review, that would be a huge help and would really help us get out there more. Thank you.